Thank you for coming. If you wanted to have a 60-minute talk about something, forget about it. It's not going to make the 60 minutes, a little bit less than that. So this is me, my name, the talk I'm talking about. Yay, technology, good. HTTP caching. It's a big document. You can read it on the internet if you want to. And my talk, I gave the title related to something from this man here, Phill Karlton. Maybe you do know the guy, maybe you do not know this guy, but he made a very famous statement. There are two hard things in computer science: cache invalidation and naming things. And yes, both are very hard, it seems, especially within the company I'm working. The last thing is more difficult for me than the first thing. Always nice discussion. It's good to have proper colleagues that say, Theo, this is not right, and you can do this better, and that's good. But Phill Karlton, who knows this guy? Phill Karlton is one of the guys that wrote a lot of stuff for X Windows. If you haven't known about that, it's a very, very big operating system for Unix computer systems, etc. Phill Karlton. You probably find less about Phill Karlton than this guy on the internet. Where's this guy? This guy. If you will look for this guy on the internet, you will probably find more on the internet than Phill Karlton, but I'm not as famous as him. All right, anyway. I work at Broadbean Technologies in London since a year and a half. Very interesting company, and I had to say from my CTO that yes, we do still hire people. We are very interested. If you want to work in London for a very interesting company, talk to me later. But yeah, caching. What is caching all about? Caching is mostly a place where you hide your stuff secretly. You put it there for a short period of time, maybe a little bit longer period of time, and well, maybe you know this guy. It's fun watching these movies, but that's not the kind of caching I'm talking about. I'm talking about speeding up the internet. And we all like to have speedy internet. We all like to have things fast instead of slow. So that's what I'm talking about, how you can speed up your web applications, your internet, and doing caching. It's not something new, certainly not. When we wrote the internet years ago, decades ago, we were talking about it should be a client-server environment. We should have a uniform interface so that everybody knows what we're talking about. We should have all kind of layered systems, meaning that you don't know who is in between. You think you're talking straight to the server, but no, because you have these servers in between, it works all very nicely without you knowing. Yes, it had cache in it. Wow. And it should be stateless and whatever. Things that are very hard to describe. But yes, these are the principles of the internet. Wow. Can you see the squares? It has squares around it. Here. It has a square. Man! I have bright green squares on my screen. Anyway, so if I'm talking about caches, we have caches in our web applications and the internet. On the client side, probably better known as your browser cache. Some have it on the server side, and we're talking about caches built by huge companies and big pieces of software. And then we have the caches in between, as making sure that whatever we're trying to do on the internet with the caching network, make sure that whatever you want to have is quite speedy. Very handy if you have mobile devices, that your mobile operators will have something for you already when you need it. When we have big events, you want to have your resources available very quickly. These guys in the middle make sure that it happens. Caching. But actually for HTTP caching, there are only two different kinds of caches we're talking about. They're either public or they're private, which means that on the one hand, you can store whatever you want to store there because you're in control. And these guys, nah, I don't want my sensitive data on a secure cache. And that's the difference between them, mostly. I skipped this one. This is more or less like what caches are doing. So you have your request, and you go to your cache, and from your cache it goes to the server, and the server says, I have a response for you, and it goes back to the cache, and from the cache it will finally talk to your application, your web browser, or whatever. And caches are very smart. The moment you get your new request coming in for the second time, it thinks, you know what, I know better. I'm not going to talk to your server anymore. This is what I will do, and I give you a response immediately back. That makes it very handy. That's speeding up the internet. Basically, this is all about caching. You have them on either side, either client or server side. I talked about that, and this is what I was working on. This is the RFC overview a little bit, and if you take the 40-page document, you can cut off the introduction, you can cut off all these things, like if you have any comments on this, anybody reading RFCs, you know, that's all at the end, it's official stuff. I started working on HTTP caching for a very good reason, and it's a work in progress. This is what it's more about, what you need to do if you do caching properly. You need to make sure that you store your responses correctly, and when you have your responses, how you can serve them correctly. There are tons and tons of stuff you can read on. The RFC you just seen, I've never studied a document that intense. I think I've been studying it for months and months and months, and it gave me a very good explanation that when I was in Broadbean, I think 2 months ago, we had a hackathon. I started working on it during the hackathon. We had 2 days, and after 2 days, we had our stand-up presentation, like, how did you succeed with your hackathon? I said, yeah, now I know why nobody ever did it correctly, because it's, yes, hard. It's very hard. I have given talks in the past, talking heads. I gave a presentation in London 2 years ago when I was talking about REST APIs. And REST APIs is a lot about what's going on in your headers of your HTTP requests and your responses. And there are a bunch of headers, and I will mention just a few of them, the ones that are important for caching. The RFC will just show you, very surprisingly, that there are just very little bit going on in your headers. One of them is expired. When you have your server that's talking back to your client, it will give you a message like, yes, you can keep this stuff probably for the end of August, a couple of days. It's not a very good one to use, I must say. Expired dates are not the way to do it anymore. I'll come back to that later. Other very important headers in the RFC and in your responses, and which are very important for your next requests, are the validation ones. The validation ones, there are 2 of them. One is them making sure that every response, every resource has a unique ID on your server. And if you're talking back, then you can say, is this still the same one I had? Or have your version number been changed in the meantime? E-tags. Not ear tags, e-tags. The other one is a date, time, last modified thing, making sure that you can talk back to your server and say, I have here a resource in my cache, and last time I talked to you, you said it has been changed 2 weeks ago. Can you tell me, has it been changed ever since? And if it doesn't change, why would you send all these resources back to your browser, back to your web applications? It's speeding up. And I started working on a plugin for Dancer 2. You have just seen the talk from Sawyer about the plugin system. And one of the plugins I've been working on is a plugin that does conditional requests. These conditional requests, I've mentioned it a little bit already, is that these will make sure that if you send a request to your server, that it will either say, oh yeah, it's fine, your e-tag, it's still the same serial number, or your date last modified, it's fine, conditional requests, they were not there in Dancer, and that's why I wrote this plugin, so it's quite easy to make sure that your Dancer applications know about conditionals requests. And if it comes back with a answer like, man, it's fine, you're okay, it comes back with a status message in your response. It's called 304, which just says it has not been modified. And this response makes sure that you won't do your request over and over and getting all this big traffic over your network. You don't want it. You don't want a 20 megabyte file being sent over and over again. It will respond with a 304. Another very, now my English is getting a problem. Very with an E or very with an A. Very with an A is a header in your response that can tell you that, oh yes, by the way, I have multiple versions of my resource. I have an English version, German version, French version, or I have a JSON version, or a XML version, a HTML version, a plain text version, PDF version. Your very headers make sure that your cache knows that, no, you're not just making a request to this resource, this URL. I can have different versions, making sure that your cache have different versions for each, so that next time you ask for this resource on the internet, it doesn't mix up. Size, color, all right. A very important one is cache control. The cache control header gives you think, control over what's going on. But if you do not know how to take control over it, you will end up in a very, very bad situation, and you will have meltdowns. This guy with a meltdown is fine. This is a movie. This kind of meltdown is not fine. And really, we don't want this anymore. And because we had situations like this, and I'm now talking about the internet, that we had caching systems that are totally wrong implemented, we tell each other when we try to build web applications, we try to do the back-end stuff, you know what, forget about caching. Because we don't know how to do it. It's dangerous. No, you know what, let's do nothing about caching, and we just make these requests over and over and over again, because we screwed up. But I'm here to come to the rescue, and there is something that will change your web applications and your servers from now on. And I really mean from now on, because it has just been released on CPAN yesterday. Since HTTP 1.1, we get better stuff. Cache control, modern stuff. We get now control over what we want to do. And having control is very important for some people. And I have these things that go into your cache control, like max age. We want to have our resources back from a server and say, yeah, it's fine if it's on the cache, but don't let it get too old. I'd like to have fresh stuff. Another one is like, yeah, I'm fine with something that's a little bit over date. Leftovers, I'm fine if it's overdue. I can still eat it. Maximum stale, max stale, obviously. If your response is a little bit too old, it's no longer fresh, you can sometimes still say, yeah, it's fine. It's an image, it's a logo for some company I need to display on my website or on my web applications. They don't care if it's a resource that's been outdated a day or an hour. It's fine to have stale content once in a while. If you ever want to do a big feast in the Netherlands, we have problems with shops closing down with Christmas. And we have problems with shops going down during Easter. We have Easter Sunday, and we have the Monday that shops are closed. So if you want to do anything for a nice feast, you go to the shops on Thursday or on Wednesday already, because if you're getting later, the shops are getting totally full with people that are thinking, oh, we run out of food and we need to have fresh food. And if I do my shopping for these periods, I will usually look at the products and say, this one is still fresh for 2 days, but this one is still fresh for a week. So you can talk to your cache and say, I want resources. I am fine with stuff that's coming back from my cache. If it's at least fresh for another hour, day, you think, yeah, why would you need that? Well, what about your web applications that have a little bit more time needed? Say, to process your stuff, it needs 2 seconds. Wouldn't it be fine that if at the end of your process, your resource will still be fresh, so it doesn't run out, doesn't expire within the 2 seconds you need to process? Min fresh. And then there are some, one has said no cache. No cache is a very interesting thing in your cache control headers. It doesn't do what it says. You would think, yes, I do a request and I say in my cache control header, no cache. And you think, does not come from your cache? No, it does still come from your cache. However, it does tell your cache, before you tell me that this thing is okay, talk to the original server and say, is this still okay to serve from my cache? No, then don't get surprised that this one is still doing from your cache. A very funny one. What's this? Wrong key. A very funny one. The transformers. You can have your cache actually transform your content. Especially useful if you have a unzipped version of your huge JavaScript library you want to use. And then you get a request say, I want the zipped version. Sometimes your cache can be that smart. It says, you know what? Why would I go all back to the internet, request that stuff, and get this JavaScript library, which is 10 megabytes big? I just think, you know what? Zip, and I'll give you one. The same goes for pictures, images. If you have a PNG file and you want to have a JPEG version of it, why would you go all the way back to your server? Just have a transformer in your cache and it will serve a changed version. But you can sometimes tell your cache, don't do that, because I don't like it. But if you don't know about your cache, it can just do any kind of magic. The other one. Must revalidate. Another one that's funny enough, not doing what it's telling you what it's doing. So once in a while we had these revalidation things going on, and it says, yes, if it's changed with the serial number or changed after that date. If this is in your response, you would think that your server has now told the cache that whatever is happening, come back to me if it has not been changed. It doesn't. This is not doing what you think. Because the only time it does a revalidation is when your content in your cache has become stale, it's no longer fresh. It says, oh, now you need to revalidate it. Not all the time. Why would you? So, and caching is about one thing as well. It's about invalidating your resources. And that was what one of my first slides was about, how to invalidate your cache. Very hard. But if you do it properly, if you just stick to the RFCs, you have your tools to invalidate your cache. You can tell your cache that the moment I do a delete request, delete it. These methods are not safe. And if they're not safe, like a put or a post or a patch request you have on the internet, they're no longer safe and trash your content from your cache. If you don't do that, if you would, for example, have done just a delete request and you do a next get request, what will happen? Your cache thinks, oh, you know what? I still have this. Woohoo! You don't want it. And this is why things are going wrong. I'm missing here a little bit of my... Oh, man. I should have my notes anyways. I did a presentation in Granada about do you speak in my language, and maybe some people here from Cluj have seen it already, and your boss had tried to sing in with me on a song from 10cc. Content negotiations, and one slide I did show was about read the fucking RFCs. not the documentations, just RFCs. Because if you don't read them, you'll get into trouble. And because you don't read them, this is the kind of trouble you end up. We have LWP user agent with cache. I think there's an E missing. Anyways, the LWP user agent with cache. Yes, it does handle the if modified since. The documentation does not say that it handles ETAG, but it does. Good. But it only works with OK statuses. Yes, I'm sorry, this is red. I can't handle. Oh, can I? More. This is better? Good. Thank you. So, what it doesn't do is invalidation, and what it doesn't do is anything in your cache control headers. And I just told you, if you don't do the stuff in your cache control headers, you're in for trouble. Don't use this one if you want to do any caching. Memcached. Memcached is just a other version of the previous one. So it does handle it modified, doesn't mention this one, does not do it properly. It only does when it's okay. There are more responses for your web servers that you can handle. What about the 501 errors, or if you have deleted your resources with your REST API and you're going to ask for it again, you will have a 410. 410 means gone, deleted, but that's a valid response that you can put in your cache. Invalidation doesn't know about it, doesn't know about cache control. Well, that's about another LWP user agent thing. What about this one? Cached. No, it doesn't do anything with if modified since. It doesn't do no. It doesn't do no, no, no. It doesn't do anything. The only thing it was good for is you have your stuff being developed and you think, oh man, I screwed up. Because everything you have made a request for, it stores on your hard drive, and it makes it very easy if you do web scraping. Yes, it will work for web scraping. This one, LWPX user agent. Whoa, this is better. And I must say, I spoke with the guy that was working on this one, and he's doing it quite okay. I sent him an email, I said, I won't bash your ones. All the other ones, they're rubbish, and your one is actually trying to do what's written in the RFC, but he stopped developing, and all right, good. What about LW user agent CHI caching? Another one. Who? No, no. Oh yeah, it does a little bit about cache control. And no, it doesn't do the very headers. It doesn't do anything about content negotiation. You can't have multiple versions in it. Specifically, it's there in your code if you read it. And so, neither, no. HTTP cache transparent. Do you need me to go on? All right. It does do the if modified since, e-tags. It does magically do range. We're doing range. Right, anyways. It does do it a little bit, but on the other hand, no validation, no cache control, no whatever, no, 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 don't use it. All right, now I have to show you something that's a little bit embarrassing. It's a work in progress. HTTP cache caching. It's a model I probably will release during the weekend, if we have a hackathon or something. It does do yes, 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 and of course, not yet totally. There's just a tiny bit that I need to work on, and then you will have proper HTTP caching in your LWP user agent. So, it's still a work in progress. This is what the RFC was saying about your stuff. And that one, I was working on storing responses 2 weeks ago. The only things I do not do yet is the invalidation, and there are some other magical header fields in the whole entire thing, like the transform, or a funny one is the if, what was it, if cached only if cached, I'm forgetting about the words now, but the if cached only request is like, yes, do only give me a response if it's in your cache, otherwise give me a 500 error, 504 I think it is. That will be very useful if you have other functionality, like people might use recorders to do testing, or when you're offline and you still want to do some kind of testing with your things and you need to make a request to a server and you're offline. Now you can use your if cached only header and make sure that you can do it the same thing. You don't need your recorder anymore. Wow, one module handles everything. Okay, HTTP caching. I wrote it for the LWP user agent, but it will work for the server side as well. HTTP caching is nothing else than the brains according to the RFC. It's not doing any requests. It's not doing anything at all. It just a bunch of if-then-else statements, about 800 lines of code, and yes, this is what the synopsis says. And you just pass in a cache. You need to say if it's private or public, and you need to have a callback, forwarder I call it, and what you will do at the end is you just say, give me a response from this user agent, and it will work magically. Black middleware, it will probably work as well. I need somebody to help me to do it correct, because I'm not a black middleware guy at all. Something like this will work. You just have to transform your responses from HTTP responses, the HTTP requests, into the black version with your array ref, etc. But it will work. Then, my last slide. There's a guy that made a very, very, very famous quote. No, not the guy in the middle, the guy on the right. He wrote long time ago that for Perl, it's about make easy things easy and hard things possible. And I hope with my HTTP caching, if you have listened properly, that HTTP caching can be easy. Invalidation of your caches can be easy. It doesn't need to be hard. You can make now your proper clients and your server, they talk together in the way they should talk. Finally. That was it. Should I say any questions? Of course. Any questions? Oh, that's easy. Yeah. All right. So from now on, get rid of the other modules. Start using LWP user agent caching. Well, since Sunday or something like that, when it will be on CPAN. Yeah. All right. Thank you for your time. I did say it wouldn't make the whole hour, is it? Yeah. Right. Thank you for your time and enjoy your coffee.